Greetings and welcome back to Storytime with Angel. And today we are continuing the acknowledgements that Kristina had started, and we are on the second half. So we'll just get right into it. If you want to remind us where we left off and maybe just a quick little recap, maybe, I don't know, whatever you feel.
All right, so we started the appendix going through, we're going through the directions of the medicine wheel and how that aligns with our timeline and our story. We went through the East, where the beginnings of the story. Then we went into the South. We talked about how we built trust and how our relationship flourished. And now we're going to go into the West, which is called Shadows and Trials. If the South was fire in its warmth, the West was fire in its shadow. This is the direction of water, of endings, of descent into the places we would rather not go. Where the South had given us belonging and joy, the West asked us to face loss, grief, and the unraveling that comes before transformation. No sisterhood, no matter how full of laughter and light, can remain untouched by the shadows. For Angel and I, this was the season when the flames had played so close began to scorch. The same closeness that gave us comfort also meant there was nowhere to hide. Old wounds surfaced, patterns repeated, and trials came that would test whether the bond we had built could withstand the darkness. In the mirror, we also see our shadows. When we dance too close to the fire, we risk getting burned, and burned we got. As our bond became closer and closer, and our lives became even more inextricably intertwined, the burns became inevitable. Boundaries blurred, and as we struggled to juggle our individual identities, the very closeness that had once kept us so alive began to feel like the thread threatening to unravel all we had built. We began to feel the sharp wounds of boundaries crossed too many times, the small things that turned into big things. Obstacles that we once traversed with ease became insurmountable. Mixed messages, friendships taken for granted. Our lives had become so very tangled that there was no way to separate them. At first, we tried to carry on as though nothing had changed, but the tension grew heavier with every conversation. Words once received as laughter landed now as criticism. Silence, which had once been a comfort, began to feel like distance. It was as though the language we had built between us had suddenly turned foreign, and neither of us could remember the grammar of closeness. And then, like glass striking stone, our sisterhood shattered. Once cherished and carefully orchestrated, it smashed into 1,000 fine pieces. There seemed no way forward. Even if we could glue the pieces back together, how could anything ever be the same again? This fracture left a wound inside me so deep that I felt I would never be whole again. It carried with it a heavy ache of abandonment, the fear that I had not only lost her, but also lost a part of myself that only existed in her presence. The West does not allow illusions to stand. It asks to look directly at what we would rather turn away from. For us, this meant confronting the shadows within ourselves and within our relationship with the same honesty we had once used to call out the shadows in our marriages. But seeing our own reflection in another can be far more painful than pointing to it from a distance. The West taught me that every descent is a kind of initiation. To be broken is not failure, it is the doorway to transformation. Yet in the moment, all I could feel was the ache of absence, the hollow space where our bond had lived, the raw sting of abandonment, the despair of believing that nothing could ever be whole again. But the wisdom of the West is this: death and endings are not the end of the story. They are the compost of the soul, breaking down what was so that something new may grow. The grief I carried was not wasted. It became the soil in which deeper truths would one day take root. Truths about boundaries, about resilience, about the courage it takes to let go when holding on only deepens the wound. Leadership, like sisterhood, cannot be all light. To lead with authenticity is to walk through the shadow places, to face loss, betrayal, and endings, and to allow them to carve wisdom into your being. The West demanded that I confront not only the fracture in our relationship, but also the illusions I held about myself in that dark descent. I began to understand that even the deepest wound carries the potential to become a source of strength. North, wisdom and service. If the West is the place of endings, the North is the place of harvest. It is the direction of earth, of grounding, of wisdom gathered through experience. Where the West had stripped me bare, the North offered a slower, steadier path of integration. In its stillness, I began to gather the pieces of myself that remained and listen for what could be carried forward. The fracture of our sisterhood had left me hollow, but in that hollow space, a new kind of strength began to take root. The North does not rush, it invites patience. It teaches that wisdom is not born in a single moment of revelation, but through the steady work of reflection and integration. With time, I began to see that even the pain had a purpose. The fire of the South, the shadows of the West had refined me. Now the North was asking me to carry that refinement into the world as service. Our reconnection began slowly, softly. Time had passed. There was space between us, and that space was filled with mutual respect, compassion, and understanding. There was a new awareness around what had been and what could be. The physical distance was greater this time and proved to be the necessary buffer in rebuilding our relationship. Our sisterhood was reborn through the ashes. We supported each other from a distance at first, taking tentative steps forward, video chats scheduled, carefully seeking approval and consent as we crept forward. We were learning all over again. What stayed the same was that gentle knowing, the knowing the foundation we had started to build so long ago would hold this time. In the North, a bond matured into something that could flow outward. What we had once held just between us began to radiate into our families, our communities, and our work. Together, we found ways to mentor others, to co create, and to build spaces where authenticity and belonging could thrive. The lessons of our bond, collaboration over competition, service over self, presence over performance, became teachings we could embody in the wider circle of our lives. Our sisterhood was solidified through a group trip to Mexico, a shamanic journey facilitated by Angel herself. That trip tested us more than we ever could have imagined, pushing us to our edges and asking us to surrender to something larger than both of us. In Teotihuacan, I came face to face with some of my deepest fears. The intensity of that experience shook me, and in that vulnerable place, Angel was the one who held me when nobody else could. Her presence became my anchor, her steadiness the ground beneath me. That moment etched itself into my soul as a reminder of the sacredness of sisterhood, the way it holds when everything else falls away. Angel too had life altering experiences on that trip, moments that cracked her open to a transformation still unfolding. And just as she held me, I supported her through the upheaval of her own rebirth. Together in that ancient place of pyramids and prayer, our paths converged once more. The bond that had been fractured and reforged was now tempered by fire, shadow, and grace, unbreakable because it had been remade in truth. The North taught me that wisdom is not gathered in isolation, but through relationship, through the courage to fall apart and the grace to come back together again. It showed me that leadership ripens when we allow our experiences, both joyful and painful, to be harvested as medicine, and not just for ourselves, but for others. That trip to Teotihuacan was pivotal for us both. It sealed what had been broken, transformed what had been tested, and reminded me that sisterhood is not about avoiding struggle, but about walking each other through it. In holding one another through fear, grief, and rebirth, we discovered the essence of service to witness, to support, and to remain present, even when the path is uncertain. The North asks us to gather the wisdom of our journey and offer it back to the world. For me, this meant carrying forward the truth that collaboration is stronger than competition, that service outlasts performance, and that leadership grounded in love will always create belonging. From the ashes of endings, the seeds of service are sown, and in the circle of sisterhood, every harvest is shared. Center integration. At the center of the circle is the heart. It is here that all the directions meet, and it is here that our sisterhood ultimately rests. The East gave us vision and awakening. The South gave us joy, trust, and the fire of belonging. The West stripped us bare in shadows and endings. The North offered harvest, wisdom, and service. And at the center, I see that none of these can exist in isolation. They belong to each other just as Angel and I belong to the circle we've walked together. Our sisterhood has not been perfect, nor has it been easy. It has been real. It has been alive. It has been sacred. From our first spark of ignition to the fire of our laughter, from the shattering of our bones to the rebirth that followed, every step has shaped me into the leader I am becoming. The center reminds me that sisterhood is not only for the two who share it, it ripples outward. The love and truth exchanged in one relationship becomes medicine for every circle it touches. When we dare to show up fully for one another, to witness, to challenge, to celebrate, and to hold steady through the storm, we create a bond that teaches the world what authentic leadership looks like. For those seeking to embody this energy in their own relationships, the center offers these lessons. See and be seen. Allow yourself to be mirrored in both your light and your shadow. Honor presence over perfection. It is not what you do together, but the depth of how you show up that matters. Let joy and play be sacred. Laughter is as holy as prayer. Hold each other through endings as well as beginnings. Sisterhood deepens when we remain, even when it hurts. Share the harvest. Let the wisdom you cultivate together flow outward into service, family, and community. At the center, I remember that leadership is not about standing above others, but about standing with them. It is about weaving belonging through the simple but radical act of staying present, present to the spark, to the joy, to the shadow, and to the wisdom. The circle is unbroken, and as I stand at its center, I carry forward the knowing that sisterhood, in all its laughter, its trials, its wisdom, and its grace, is itself a form of shamanic leadership, authentic strategy, and service beyond performance. And I'm going to conclude with blessing of the four directions. To the east, I call the first light. May you rise each day with vision clear, and may every new beginning awaken your spirit to truth. To the south, I call the fire. May warmth and laughter fill your circle, and may trust burn bright enough to carry you through both play and vulnerability. To the west, I call the waters. May you find the courage to face your shadows, to grieve what must be released, and to let endings wash you clean for what is yet to come. To the north, I call the earth. May wisdom take root in your being, and may every harvest of joy and sorrow become nourishment for the world you serve. And to the center, I call the heart. May you remember that you are never alone. May sisterhood in all its fierce love and tender grace be your anchor and your compass, guiding you always home. And I seem to be frozen.
I was going to say, for the last couple of minutes, you've been frozen. So
Yeah.
we'll see what happens with the recording.
Yeah. Well, if
You
you were
may
still
have to
listening,
redo it, and it may be fine when it
yeah.
it may buffer.
Well, if you're able to hear me, then the voice should still come through.
We shall see.
Mhm.
Thank you for finishing. Oh,
I
you
did that on
turned it on.
purpose. I did because I wanted to see if I turned it off and came back, if I would be live again. But I wasn't really watching me reading. I was reading
Right.
words. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll see. We'll see.
I probably
We'll
have
see
too
what it
many
looks
tabs
like on the
open.
recording. And I'm sure this won't be the first time that you read it for us. So thank you. It's very interesting that we're reading it on this day with the astrology the way it is, starting in the West. It just seemed so perfect.
It does feel like we're in a time of shadows.
The endings are here. While they're talking about this year as a 9-year, the endings are here, right? New life starting in January. So I think the reading was perfect for today.
Yeah, 2 more months till January.
Right? Good stuff. That's good stuff. All right. I will stop the
Thank you.
recording.